Night chaos in the U.S. Capitol.
Take that house! Take it now!
That's just, I think, tearing our country apart, the U.S. apart. I'm just heartbroken.
Scenes of violence and mayhem as angry supporters of Donald Trump stormed the U.S. Capitol today. The reverberations felt far and wide, including right here at home. Plus,
I don't believe there was any smoke detector sounding at the time.
a man is dead after a fire breaks out at a home in North York. We'll have the latest from the scene. And
I wouldn't rule anything out if it was going to be effective.
the city has now been in lockdown for more than 6 weeks, but as case counts and hospitalizations continue to soar, some wonder if even tighter restrictions need to be put in place. A much quieter scene outside the U.S. Capitol in Washington tonight, where a very different scene played out just hours ago. Protesters backing President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol in violent clashes with police as Congress gathered to formally approve President-elect Joe Biden's win in the general election. We'll speak to a reporter on the scene in just a few minutes. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Well, it's an assault on democracy that has rocked the United States, and the reverberations are very much being felt here at home. We'll have the reaction. But first, we want to take you through what happened on this unprecedented day. Our Katie Simpson reports from Washington.
Our Capitol! Our Capitol!
Unnerving and remarkable scenes of chaos on the doorstep of the home of American democracy. Angry supporters of the president advancing on the Capitol. Tensions escalating quickly.
Security had closed off this area of the Capitol, but after those protesters pushed their way through a gate, they made their way up here to the steps and even climbed some of the bleachers set up for inauguration, prompting a heavy response from police.
Officers tried to push back, firing pepper bullets into the agitated crowd. Trump supporters only grew bolder, and police lost control. They forced their way into the building. Outnumbering the officers inside, they seized this sacred space, leading to unimaginable scenes and violence. One woman was shot and killed, and several police officers were hurt. It took the president more than 2 hours to tweet his first call for calm. Considered a slow response since these people listened to him and genuinely believe his false claims the election was stolen.
We want Trump! We want Trump!
A claim he knows infuriates his base, a claim he repeated at a rally this morning.
We will never give up. We will never concede.
This will be remembered as a brutal day for American democracy, making the transition of power all the more difficult for the incoming president.
CNN's Whitney Wild is outside the Capitol building tonight and joins us now. Whitney, a curfew we know came into effect there at 6 o'clock tonight until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Now, after all the chaos of this afternoon, what's it like there right now?
Well, now finally, there's a sense of calm here in Washington, D.C. The law enforcement has finally regained control of the Capitol Hill grounds and additionally been able to clear out the Capitol itself, so much so that the joint session to debate these ratifications of the Electoral College votes is now back underway. Seemingly business as usual. If you hadn't been watching all day and you saw what was going on now, based on the pictures of the Senate floor, you would never know what had happened because, as I said, they are just have gotten back to business as usual, Kelda.
Now, earlier, Trump's critics and allies alike, they were calling for him to release some kind of statement of calm. He didn't really heed that advice, instead continuing to spew baseless claims of voter fraud in a video statement and on Twitter. But we now know he won't be tweeting anymore tonight. Twitter has since locked his account.
That's right. And again, the tweets are so inflammatory. I can't even read them to you because they're no longer on Twitter at this point. But he didn't condemn the violence, which is what his aides had been urging him to do. That's what other Republicans had been urging him to do. And because he was so reluctant to condemn the violence, again, Twitter suspended his account. Facebook suspended his account. And then further, even members of his own cabinet called what happened today despicable. And right now, there's a real conversation going on among members of his cabinet to try to invoke the 25th Amendment, which would mean that they feel he is actually not capable of carrying out his responsibilities as the president. I mean, not physically or mentally capable of carrying out his responsibilities as the president. That is a real conversation that's happening right now among cabinet members. Additionally, among Republicans, there is talk possibly of moving forward with an impeachment and prompt removal. But there are many Republicans here in Washington who are saying he has to go and he has to go immediately. Kelda.
Now, Whitney, Congress, as you mentioned, has now reconvened to certify Biden's win. What are we hearing from lawmakers who are inside?
Well, right now, for example, we just heard from Senator Lindsey Graham, who said that there was so much he disagreed with about how this election played out. But at this point, he said, count me out. We have to move forward with this, with the reality that Joe Biden will be the 46th president. We can go back and look at what happened, but for now, he is urging his colleagues to drop their objections and just move forward with what is going to happen, which again is that Joe Biden will take office in the White House. Kelda.
All right, thanks so much, Whitney. That is CNN's Whitney Wild outside the Capitol building in Washington. Now, as mentioned, reverberations of the chaos in the U.S. are being felt right here at home. Ardalia Ashry now with reaction from those watching closely north of the border.
A disheartening scene for Hal Cain as he watched the riots erupt in the U.S. Capitol.
I think tearing our country apart, the U.S. apart.
Cain is an American who has lived in Kingston, Ontario for almost 2 decades.
I'm just heartbroken.
Trump supporters also took the streets of Toronto today, gathering outside the U.S. consulate on University Avenue. Mayor John Tory expressing his disappointment.
That is for them to deal with, and it's really sad in the context of what is supposed to be the celebration of a great democracy, one of the world's great democracies, having rendered its verdict with respect to who they wish to have in a position of leadership.
Shamal Idris lives in Washington, D.C. He says he's scared of what's to come.
I think the concern is less about, gee, can this city handle a really vibrant protest, and more, is the city sufficiently prepared for the planned violence that seems to be part of this.
Steve Nardi, chair of Democrats Abroad Canada, is also concerned with 14 days to go before Biden's inauguration.
The country cannot have 2 weeks of this destruction. I don't know if it could survive that.
He believes Capitol Police could have done more to stop the rioters.
The Capitol Police being instructed to not use violence and not be in riot gear when if Black Lives Matter is out there. I mean, the racial injustice that in the different approaches today that is screaming at us.
Chairman of the Canadian chapter of Republicans overseas says he's devastated by today's violence and believes someone needs to take charge.
There's not enough Capitol Police to possibly deal with this, and it's got to be stopped by someone in the executive for sure.
Back in Kingston, Cain says watching the day's events unfold has left him fearful for the future of his home country.
This has got me so perplexed, and I'm not as optimistic about that this is going to be a smooth transition that's going to be over with tonight. I think it's going to play out over the next several days.
Dalia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
And CBC News has complete coverage from Washington, including reaction from across the political spectrum and from people around the world. Head to our website, cbcnews.ca, for the latest. Turning to some other news now, one person is dead after a fire in a house near Jane and Finch.
Basement fire, 167 Shoreham. They arrived on scene, entered the building, knocked the fire down fairly quick, removed one victim.
It happened around 5 this evening on Shoreham Drive in North York. A 55-year-old man was removed from the basement of the house without vital signs. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause is still unknown. This is the city's first fatal fire of the year. And an update to a story we brought you last night. The doctor who came under fire for his vacation over the holidays is out of another job. Dr. Tom Stewart is no longer the CEO of Niagara Health. The decision was made after he went on vacation to the Dominican Republic despite public health orders to stay home. Stewart also sat on a COVID-19 panel that advises Premier Doug Ford. He resigned from that panel last night. As of right now, Stewart is still president and CEO of St. Joseph's Health System. Well, Quebec announced late this afternoon that it will be the first province in the country to introduce a curfew in order to curb the spread of COVID-19. And as case counts and hospital admissions continue to soar here in Ontario, and specifically in the GTA, some are wondering whether more restrictions should be introduced here as well. Chris Glover reports.
There's no debate. The COVID crisis is gripping GTA hospitals.
And as has been the case, our hospital has been at capacity. We continue to send patients to other hospitals.
I am deeply concerned that this week we have started to see increases in cases and a surge related to the holidays.
What is up for debate? What to do next? Some want schools shut next week, but Toronto's mayor isn't convinced.
That schools relative to other places have been a source of concern, but less of a source of concern than some other places.
Without comprehensive asymptomatic testing and contact tracing, the union representing elementary teachers says classes are an unknown danger.
There is no comprehensive testing in our schools. So I'm not sure where the data is coming from.
Obviously, we're very concerned. We want the safest outcomes for our kids.
Toronto's medical officer says schools are safe with safety measures.
To my mind, the most important thing here is what are we doing to enhance the safety and the health of children within our city.
How about imposing a curfew, like what's happening in Quebec?
I wouldn't rule anything out if it was going to be effective and it was going to be consistent with the best advice we could get from the medical and scientific experts.
After 6 weeks of lockdown in Toronto and infections soaring, some are demanding a curfew.
Just too soon to see the impact of the December 26th shutdown.
But infectious disease specialist Dr. Isaac Bogosh says it's too early for a province-wide curfew. And he says any new measures need to come with supports for lower income earners or they will fail.
And something like paid sick leave would work wonders. It's not going to solve all of the problems, but for everything we're asking for incremental safety, incremental benefit, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck with that.
I've never believed in the police state.
Last time we checked, Premier Ford said no curfew. Today, though, definitely some movement.
And we're moving at the pace of lightning, as I say. I'm going to have a conversation with Premier Legault tonight.
Ford telling us he will have that conversation with the Premier of Quebec since they have now put in place that curfew, which starts on Saturday at 8 p.m. And Ford says he will also then consult his own health table before making any decisions on curfews or schools for the people of Ontario. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
A nurse who worked at a GTA long-term care home has died from COVID-19. 57-year-old Maureen Ambersley worked for the extended care home in Mississauga. Ambersley is being remembered by her union for dedicating her life to caring for society's most vulnerable. She contracted the disease while at work. Ambersley is the fourth member of the Service Employees International Union to die of COVID-19.
But again, these deaths are all preventable. The government needs to step up and they need to get control of this with a real solid plan, which they failed to do over the summer when they had the summer and the fall when they had time to come up with a plan.
Stewart says all the deaths have been among women of color. Premier Doug Ford held his first news conference in 2 weeks today. It's the longest stretch Ford has gone without a news briefing during the pandemic. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has more.
How you doing, everyone?
For his first news briefing in more than 2 weeks, the Premier is at Pearson Airport, announcing a voluntary COVID-19 testing program for arriving international travelers. Plenty has happened since December 22nd, when Doug Ford last held a news conference. COVID cases in Ontario are now surging past 3,000 a day. Hospitals have a record number of coronavirus patients, and each week, hundreds are dying. So there are a lot of pent-up questions for the Premier, including, why is it taking so long to vaccinate all long-term care residents?
So we aren't delaying. As soon as we have it, we're going to have people vaccinated.
Although provincial officials say they expect to get 80,000 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine every week this month, Ford insists it's not coming quickly enough.
We will run out of the Pfizer vaccine by today or tomorrow at the latest.
Parents want to know, will elementary students be going back to class next Monday?
We're going to talk to the health table and the chief medical officer and get their advice. That's the expertise that we're going to take. And we're going to take that advice, and we'll be announcing that in the next day or so.
And in the wake of Finance Minister Rod Phillips' resignation, Ford was asked twice, did any other Conservative MPPs or his staff travel over the holidays?
I made it very clear to everyone not to travel, and I made it very clear to our caucus and cabinet members about traveling.
After the news conference, a spokesperson for the Premier's office issued a statement saying they are not aware of any other Conservative MPPs or staff who traveled outside of Canada. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead tonight, it's the video making waves online. A would-be porch pirate caught red-handed.
He was stuck in a bit of a pickle there, like literally.
You want me to get you a shovel?
We'll show you more of the suspect's fruitless attempts to escape and what people in the neighborhood have to say. Plus,
still a lot of cloud cover out there today. We're going to see those clouds eroding. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. Stick around. I'll have your full forecast after the break.
As we told you last night, beginning at midnight, travelers boarding a plane to Canada will face new regulations.
This new interim order will provide an additional layer of protection for Canadians and travelers. Many other existing measures were already in place for air travel to Canada.
International travelers 5 years of age and over must show proof of a negative COVID test within 72 hours before boarding. It must be the standard PCR test, not the rapid test. Because some countries have limited access to this kind of testing, travelers departing from the Caribbean or South America are given a wider time frame. They can use tests done within 96 hours of departure until January 14th. Air flight crews will not need to take the test. A 14-day mandatory quarantine for all travelers entering Canada will remain in effect. And you're looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline. A bit cloudy tonight with a few clear breaks and some isolated flurries. Let's go now to our meteorologist Colette Kennedy. And Colette, yesterday we were talking about yearning for that vitamin D. Now the sun actually did make a cameo in some areas today.
Thanks, Kelda. Yeah, I know it's hard to believe there were areas of our viewership that actually saw some sunshine today. It was there over towards, say, Mississauga a little bit, over towards Hamilton, around Oakville. That region kind of carved out a little bit of that cloud deck and got some sunshine to come through, but there just wasn't much of it. We're going to continue to erode these clouds. A few isolated flurries in the forecast. Some cooler air is going to be moving in, but more sunshine during our daylight hours will be on the way. So we'll see more clearing tomorrow and then even more sunshine as we head towards Friday, although it does come at a price where our overnight temperatures are going to be dipping back closer to seasonal for this time of year. Your daytime highs, have a look at those, all other than Ottawa above freezing, -2 there for the nation's capital. And these are the isolated flurries. Not much to see with that. You can see the cloud cover even towards the GTA. This is tomorrow morning. It's trying to move away finally. We have a northerly flow, so we'll still see associated with the lakes and that air going across them, some of that cloud cover further south, but it's nicely going to move out of much of southern and eastern Ontario. The last place to clear is going to be southwestern Ontario. So London will probably see some sunshine tomorrow. Chatham, Kent, you'll be kind of on the border. And Windsor, it's really not till we get closer to Friday that you can count on getting more sun coming through. Your temperatures -2 for tonight. Leamington -2 as well. Highs tomorrow just above freezing and at freezing for Sarnia and just below there for London. And for Toronto tonight, -3 for the low. The winds aren't that bad, but still, they'll give us a wind chill of about -7 at times. I say that because the winds won't be necessarily steady. Tomorrow afternoon, this is what we were talking about for temperatures. So I was showing you the daytime highs from today that were above freezing. Well, tomorrow there'll be a little bit of a struggle to get there. And so we'll see it just a little bit cooler, but it's more than that. It's these overnight lows that I was mentioning because we're really hitting that around 7 or so in the morning, 7, even 8 sometimes. So it's a cooler start to the day. Friday, though, look at that, more sunshine, even though the high is only -3. And then even into the weekend, we are talking about high pressure building in, hanging in here, and something we don't see that often in terms of our pattern. No active weather coming our way, so that stretches all the way through towards Monday. We get those temperatures coming up above the freezing mark again, and still some cooler nights. But by Monday night into Tuesday, even that goes above seasonal as well, Kelda.
Like the sound of that. Thank you so much, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
Take a look at this. The Toronto Raptors and Phoenix Suns linked arms in a center court circle for the national anthems ahead of tonight's game. The show of solidarity came hours after a violent mob swarmed the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, and one day after news that no charges would be laid in the shooting of Jacob Blake. Raptors coach Nick Nurse called the events of the past 2 days disturbing, disgusting, incredulous, and sad. Finally tonight, people online are calling it instant karma, a video of a man getting caught in the act as he tries to steal a package from someone's porch in Mississauga. In a panic, the man tries to flee in his car, but then I'll let Greg Ross explain what happened.
That's done. You're done.
That was the moment a Mississauga man and his wife captured what appeared to be another man trying to steal a package from their front porch. James King lives next door and looked out his window when he heard the commotion.
All I see is my neighbor coming out, like his wife's like holding a camera, they're filming.
And he watched as this suspected porch pirate tried to make a fast getaway, but instead reversed right into a snowbank and got stuck.
All you see is like the tires getting stuck there, like literally on the curb there. The guy's trying to back out, obviously, and trying to escape. He was stuck in a bit of a pickle there, like literally.
The man gets out of his car and first tries to push his way out of the snowbank and then later tries to dig his car out with his hands.
You want me to get you a shovel?
The homeowners seemed to be having fun with the situation, but did call police, who arrived about 6 minutes later.
Once they get there, sure enough, that individual's still struggling with that vehicle, and our officers do take him into custody.
Police tell us that the man whose car got stuck in this snowbank is 33 years old and lives in Brampton. He's been charged with theft under $5,000 and fraud.
It's definitely just unlucky. It's a bad sequence of events, you know. It's just, some would say it's karma.
The suspect is scheduled to appear in court in March. Greg Ross, CBC News, Mississauga.
Well, that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night.